I don't cover non-Americans very often, but when I do, you know it's something absolutely crazy. Today we're talking about Robert Le Rochefoucauld, a boy that escaped Nazi-occupied France, made his way over to Great Britain where he was trained by the British SOE, also known as the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. After completing his training, he was then parachuted back into Nazi-occupied France where he was tasked with training French resistance fighters in how to be saboteurs and carrying out guerrilla warfare, as well as carrying out massive sabotage missions himself before being captured by the Nazis, tortured, sentenced to death, and somehow escaping before he would get rescued and then jump back into France and do it all over again. And we're going to get into it right after a word from our sponsor.
Delete me. Why'd you give me a shotgun? It kicks too hard.
Yeah, I know. I like watching the recoil.
What are you talking about?
Nothing. Just keep firing it a lot. Preferably in slow motion. Hey, did it jiggle?
Did what jiggle?
When you fell from heaven. All right, here's the deal. Super simple, straightforward business model. You give them money, they turn around and make sure the data brokers on the internet aren't selling your personal information. What does that even mean? Okay, here's the entire internet and every free service on the planet inside of a nutshell, okay? There's a saying, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. What that means is pretty much anything on the internet that you use, that's a service, whether that be Google, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all of it, okay? It's all an app. So one of two things is happening. They're either gonna feed you ads, and that's how that company makes money since their service is free, or they're going to collect your personal information, then turn around and sell it to data brokers on the internet, and then they're going to turn around and sell it to whoever buys it, and next thing you know, you're getting 17,000 robocalls every single day. And that's where Delete Me comes in. They will look through all the major data brokers and find the ones that are selling your personal information and submit opt-out requests on your behalf, and then they are legally obligated to comply. And then they'll continue to monitor these data brokers, and if they get your information again, Delete Me will submit an opt-out request again. Basically, you're paying Delete Me to get rid of all the downsides of all of the free stuff on the internet, which I think is absolutely worth it. If you want to check them out, I'll have a link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video. All right, our story begins in Paris, France in 1923 when Robert Le Rochefoucauld was born. He is one of 10 children. And unlike pretty much every other World War II war hero I've talked about on this channel, he did not grow up poor in poverty during the Great Depression.
You messed with his eyesight, right? No.
And that is because the last name Le Rochefoucauld is quite literally French nobility dating back over 1,000 years. This guy grew up in a mansion right next to the Eiffel Tower and spent his summer times going off to grandma's house. And when I say grandma's house, what I really mean is grandma's castle that had 30 bedrooms. How did he get to grandma's house every summer? Great question. He took the family's private luxury train.
Christina.
Rich! Homie did not have a normal life, okay? He was going to fancy private schools, had everything served to him on a silver platter, literally learned 3 languages by the time he was 18. That being said, we do need to understand the culture of the broader society that he grew up in. While he individually may have been living in a life of luxury, the rest of France was still rebuilding its country after World War I. During World War I, France lost approximately 20% of its male population between the ages of 18 and 50. Literally think of 5 men you know, and then imagine if one of them died, and then extrapolate that out through the entire country you live in. This obviously has enormous ramifications for the entire country and culture, and leads to quite a bit of animosity towards Germany. Because of that, in the Le Rochefoucauld household, they were not allowed to have any products that were made in Germany, and despite the fact that he had learned 3 languages, he was not allowed to learn German because, as his mother said, he was not allowed to practice such an indelicate tongue. On top of that, his father served in World War I and was injured and had to use a cane for the rest of his life. So there was a lot of animosity towards Germany in the broader French culture, as well as in his household specifically. And that animosity got cranked up to about 1,000 when he was 16 years old and Germany invaded France. When Germany invaded France, Paris was considered an open city, which basically meant we don't want you to destroy the entire city. There's a lot of history there. There's a lot of people there. So we're just not going to defend it. You can roll in, occupy, seize that territory, and we're not going to put up much of a fight, which is exactly what happened. And within days of Germany occupying Paris, they started rounding up people they thought could potentially become an issue. And one of the people that came to mind was Robert's dad, who was a World War I veteran and French nobleman that was obviously loyal to France. So they threw him in prison. Because of this, Robert, his mother, and his siblings all fled to Grandma's castle.
We make for the refuge of Helm's Deep.
While there, he began listening to the radio where Charles de Gaulle was speaking. Charles de Gaulle was a general in the French military that, after France fell, fled to the UK, and he was basically declared the leader of Free France and was going on the radio every day, encouraging the French to fight and advocating for France to fight back and reclaim their home. And being a 16-year-old teenager who had a ton of pride in his home country of France and grew up in this family of nobility nobility with all these famous great men that came before him that did incredible things for the country, growing up in a society that already didn't really like Germany, not liking Germany himself, and having them roll in and imprison his father. Naturally, he ate that shit up. And it gets even worse when the situation in Paris stabilizes, so him and his mom and his siblings go back home and find out that Nazis have occupied their house. Upon their arrival, the Germans agree to let them live in the house, but they're still gonna live in the house too. So now he is quite literally a 16-year-old who does not like Nazis that is being forced to be a roommate with a bunch of Nazis.
Continue.
From the ages of 16 to 19, he is living at home, finishing up high school, starting to go to college, and he is being a roommate with the Nazis the entire time. And he absolutely hates it. His mother has to get him to control his temper multiple times. Now, during this 3-year time period, it's weird. There's not a lot militarily going on in France. I mean, there's Nazi soldiers all over the place, but for the most part, they're just like blending into society, and the Nazis are trying to, not be the bad guys. So they're actually being halfway polite to a lot of people. The soldiers are, ordered to give up their seats on trains and buses to elderly women and citizens. And a lot of people are adapting to this new lifestyle of the Germans are just occupying us. But Robert never adapts. He's a rebellious teenager. He keeps listening to Charles de Gaulle on the radio, and he feels a deep dishonor. He feels like he's letting down his country and his family legacy because all of the family members that came before him all went off and they fought for France, and he's a 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old kid that can't do anything about it because nobody else is fighting. And then one day, the mailman that delivers mail to the Gestapo headquarters comes to the La Rochefoucauld household and says, "Hey, I delivered the mail to this police department and they got a letter. I steamed it open so I could read it to see who they're going to arrest next. And Robert La Rochefoucauld has been reported as being a communist sympathizer and they're going to come arrest him." Now, that's not true, but doesn't really matter. The Gestapo thinks it is and they're going to come arrest him. So at the age of 19, he has to flee. So he gets 2 fake IDs with 2 different names and then alternates which ID he's giving every time he has to show his papers. That way it makes it harder for him to track. He makes his way all the way to Spain where he links up with the resistance, and he tells them that he's actually a French Canadian and he's trying to make his way back to Great Britain so he can keep fighting against the Nazis. Which is brilliant because remember, he's trilingual. He speaks French, English, and Spanish, and this is going to explain his accent to anybody that wonders. So they buy his story. He gets linked up with 2 downed British pilots and they end up smuggling them back into Great Britain. And he's hoping that once he gets there, he's going to be able to link up with Charles de Gaulle and help fight for France. Once he makes his way to Great Britain, he is interrogated by British intelligence pretty rigorously, which is standard procedure, making sure he's not a spy or a double agent or something like that. And they don't torture him, but what they do is they sit him in a room, they interview him, they ask him all their questions. He lies, he says he's 21, he says he's French Canadian, trying to get his way into Great Britain. And they end up sitting him in this room for hours on end. They feed him a bunch of tea and then refuse to let him go to the bathroom. And then they go in after hours and interview him again to see if having a full bladder and really having to take a piss is going to change his answer or make him alter his story in any way, which will reveal that he's up to something. At which point, he basically just comes clean, tells the whole truth. He's 19, his name's Robert La Rochefoucauld, and one of the interviewers recognizes his name as French nobility. At which point, nepotism kicks in. They're like, oh, French nobility is not going to be a spy. Cool. We're going to send in a guy that'll talk to you if you really want to go fight the Germans. And they send in a guy by the name of P.K. Wicks. And he's an officer in the British SOE, the Special Operations Executive, that Winston Churchill created to, quote, set Europe ablaze. He also gave them the name the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Guilty as charged.
Basically, these guys are the inspiration for 007. P.K. Wicks comes to him. He's like, hey, you're French nobility. We want you. If you'll have you, here's the thing. You got to pass this super rigorous training. But if you pass, we'll jump your ass back into France and you can take the fight to the Germans. Robert is immediately interested because he really wants to fight the Germans, but he still wants to talk to General de Gaulle first to figure out if there's something more he could be doing. So P.K. Wicks organizes a meeting between Robert La Rochefoucauld and General de Gaulle. They have a meeting. We don't really know what's said, but when he comes out of the meeting, he agrees that he's going to try to be part of the British SOE. From here, they ship him off to training. In the first 3 weeks, his basic training is basically one giant smoke session, running, push-ups, beating these guys up, making them swim when they're tired, making them cold, making them hot, trying to weed out all the weak people. Robert makes it through. After that, potential SOE operatives are sorted into 3 different categories. You've got your general spies, your communication experts, and your saboteurs, your demolition men.
What makes me a good demo man? If I were a bad demo man, I wouldn't be sitting here discussing it with you now, would I?
From here, he learns everything about sabotage. He not only learns how to make bombs, but more importantly, how to utilize those bombs to be most effective. He learns where to put them on a bridge to destabilize the entire structure. If he's going to take out a factory, he learns how to identify the most important components of the factory to take that factory out of commission for as long as possible. He learns that you shouldn't just attack power lines, you should attack the transformers that feed them, because that's what's going to take longer to replace. He learns that you shouldn't just target a railroad or a train, you should also take out all the cranes and heavy equipment that's going to be needed to clear that wreckage to repair it as well. After that, he learns how to be a paratrooper, and then the real spy training starts.
You know what, sir? I can't say that I am shocked, because I felt very good about this year's test.
The SOE brings in a guy by the name of Eric Sykes, who's regarded as like one of the best combat shooters in the world. He's going to teach these guys how to use guns in actual combat, not just go set out on a range and shoot at a static target. He's going to put them through full-on shoot house training, and he's going to learn from the best. After that, they bring in Eric Fairbairn, who's one of, if not the best hand-to-hand combat experts at this point in time in the entire world. This guy was former British military, and then after that went off and became a cop in Shanghai, which was one of the most violent cities in the world at this point in time. While he was there, he was jumped by a gang and stabbed 12 times.
Just a flesh wound.
Somehow he managed to survive, and then decided that shit's never going to happen again, and decided he was going to learn every single martial art that he could. This guy studied jiu-jitsu, became a second-degree black belt in judo, studied boxing, kickboxing, savate, wrestling, knife fighting, and anything else he could get his hands on. While he was still being a cop in Shanghai, his official police record logs over 600 real-world fights, and he helped found the first ever SWAT team in world history. So between Sykes and Fairbairn, they basically turn him into John Wick in a fighting system that they refer to as gutter fighting.
Oh shit, I think he likes it. How about some more? Hell yes.
From here, he has his final test, and the final test is they are going to yeet him out the back of a plane in a parachute with no map, no compass, no equipment, somewhere in the UK, and he has to make his way all the way back to SOE headquarters without being captured by the police. And they have notified the police that they need to track his ass down. Now, luckily, they do it in Paris, so he has a teammate that's going to be able to help him out. Unfortunately, his teammate breaks his ankle as soon as he jumps out of the plane. So Robert is like, fuck it, we ball, goes, steals a military truck, drives it back, picks up his teammate, and drives him straight back to SOE headquarters, and he's back the next day by like lunch, breaking the course record by a ridiculous amount of time. At which point the chain of command is like, that was super, super illegal, but also the exact kind of ungentlemanly shit we're looking for. You're in. Out of his class of 30 men, only 7 of them graduated, and he's one of them. All right, summer 1943. Since Robert has left France, things have changed a lot. When he left, you had the German-occupied section of France, and then you had Free France or Vichy France, which was still kind of under Germany's control, but they were putting on the illusion that France still kind of existed as its own sovereign nation. And that was a big part of the reason when Robert was in France that people weren't as willing to fight, because there was still technically France as a sovereign nation, so to speak. But by the summer of 1943, that has changed as World War II has ramped up. The Nazis now occupy all of France. In addition to that, they are also forcing French people to work inside of factories, even sending some of them into Germany to work in their factories to aid with the war effort. Obviously, because of this, an enormous amount of the French population is pissed off, so that means that a bunch more of them are going to be willing to either A, help the resistance, or B, join the resistance themselves. The obvious problem, they don't have guns and they don't know what they're doing, and that is where Robert comes in. British SOE is linked up with the French resistance and told them they are going to be airdropping in an expert, and he is going to come with a bunch of guns and plastic explosives that he's going to distribute out to the French resistance, and then he's going to provide training and help them go out and sabotage the Germans. June 1943, he boards a plane headed off towards Nazi-occupied France. He is going to get dropped off at a certain zone, and the French resistance is going to be there waiting for him. On the way there, the plane gets lit up by German anti-aircraft fire. Luckily, they managed to limp the plane to the right drop zone. Robert jumps out, they throw out all the crates of guns and plastic explosives behind him, and then they take off. Robert never finds out what actually happened happened to that plane. So Robert hits the ground, French resistance runs out, they meet up with him. He's like, hey, we got lit up by the Germans. The Germans know that we're doing something here. We gotta get all this shit on the trucks and dip, which is exactly what they do. Now, initially, Robert has some difficulties with the French resistance because they said that they were gonna be parachuting in some badass expert, and then a 19-year-old kid shows up getting thrown out of a plane, and he's talking to a bunch of French resistance fighters that are, you know, normal dudes in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and now they're taking orders from some 19-year-old kid. But his skills spoke for themselves, and they eventually ended up having a huge amount of respect for him, and he gained a ton of notoriety throughout all of France. For about the next 5 months, he trained dozens of French resistance fighters in how to be saboteurs, using guns, using plastic explosives, as well as carrying out sabotage missions himself. During this time, they took out a ton of rail lines, they took out a power plant, and they took out a repair yard for German heavy equipment. So things are going really well for about 5 months, but then obviously as the French resistance continues to get bigger and continues to get more effective, the Nazis are going to react, and they start sending in more secret police, and they actually have these secret police go in and start joining the French resistance so they can figure out who's who, and then they start arresting everybody. And by November of 1943, it gets to the point that they are capturing a ton of people, so a lot of the French resistance fighters, Robert included, all just kind of have to lay low for a while. So he goes out in the country, finds an abandoned barn, and he's just living inside of this abandoned barn, trying to go unnoticed by absolutely everyone. Robert is especially scared of getting captured because by this point in the war, the Germans somehow have figured out that the British SOE, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, exists, and Hitler has signed the order that they are to be killed on sight. Now, technically that is a war crime, but the Germans argued that because they were operating in civilian clothing in German-occupied territory, they were an illegal combatant, so they were allowed to kill them. On top of that, the Germans aren't super renowned for caring about war crimes in the first place. So Robert is laying low inside of this abandoned barn out in the country for about a month. It's just long day after long day, waiting, and then one day on December 7th, 1943, a bunch of cop cars pull up to the barn. They go inside the barn, they arrest Robert. Robert tries to feed him a line of bullshit like, oh, I'm just, you know, some homeless guy that's traveling. I got tired. I pulled over in this barn to take a nap. The Germans then search the barn, find a bunch of plastic explosives and submachine guns, and he's like, those aren't mine. Obviously, they don't believe him.
I don't even know what this is. This sort of thing ain't my bag, baby.
One book, Swedish-made penis enlarger pumps and me. This sort of thing is my bag, baby.
Ah.
At this point, Robert is like, okay, well, I'm dead. I'm about to get shot in this barn right now because I'm British SOE. But that's not what they do. They handcuff him, they throw him in a car, and they start taking him off to prison. And the entire car ride there, he's like, why didn't they just kill me? What is going to happen next? Oh, they're probably going to torture me and then kill me. Great. And he's like trying to figure out why they didn't kill him right there on the spot like they had orders to do. And it dawns on him, they probably didn't do it because he speaks fluent French, doesn't have an accent, and the dude kind of looks French. His family's been there for 1,000 years, so they didn't just instinctively think that he was British SOE. Realizing this, when he gets to the prison, for the first and only time during his operational career, he actually gives the Germans his real name because La Rochefoucauld, super French name that's well known, and then that's going to add to, oh, he's just French resistance, he's not British SOE, so at least he won't get executed immediately. From here, he gets thrown in solitary confinement for a couple of days. Obviously, they're trying to soften him up before they interrogate him, but he's already been in solitary confinement for like the past month inside of a barn, so it doesn't really affect him.
Boy, they went all out on this one, huh?
From here, they take him in, they interrogate him. It becomes pretty obvious to Robert that they think he's a communist, so he kind of like goes along with it, not by saying that he is a communist, but by refusing to admit that he's a communist, trying to get the Germans to prove it, and then that way it kind of like gives them tunnel vision that they're trying to prove that this guy's a communist. Basically, he's doing anything and everything he can to not get identified as British SOE. After the initial interrogations, they throw him into a normal cell, and he has a cellmate with him, and within being in the room with the cellmate for like 20 minutes, the guy has an epileptic seizure, falls onto the ground. 2 guards rush in, they start freaking out, they don't know what to do. Robert's just kind of sitting on the bed watching this whole thing go down. The 2 guards are helping the guy having the seizure. The door is wide open, and he's just like, huh. They end up taking the guy to the infirmary. Robert never sees him again. From here, they start interrogating Robert every day for multiple hours a day. And when I say interrogating, I mean torturing. Now, we don't know exactly what Robert himself was subjected to, but we do know the methods that were being used in this prison at this time period. Those included waterboarding, getting beaten with bats, having your testicles shocked, having the soles of your feet cut open and being forced to walk on salt, the pulling out of teeth, the pulling out of fingernails, and there's even a couple accounts of prisoners being forced or strapped down over a toilet that was full of starving rats. And this goes on every day for months. Robert never says shit, or at least never says anything true or that's actually helpful to the Nazis. He keeps leaning back on his training. He keeps getting angry at the torturer. He's yelling at the guy. He's just making it not fun. You know what I mean? I've never tortured anybody, don't really want to, but I would imagine if you've tortured 100 people and they're all, you know, begging you to stop and crying and being sad, and you've got one guy that's yelling at you being a dick, it probably makes it a little bit less fun.
Where did you get those relics from? The Shah Ferran's garage sale?
You know, I don't even think you want to be tortured.
I don't want to be tortured.
You're just like taking all the fun out of it.
During this entire time period, the only good thing that happens is, for some reason, I have no idea why, the Germans are still allowing the prisoners to receive mail. And there's somebody from inside the local community that is sending in care packages to just random people. And Robert keeps getting these care packages with like chocolate and food and bread and shit. And that's what keeps him going. Other than that, it's just day after day of getting tortured for hours upon hours. And this goes on for months. December, January, February. By March, he's really starting to lose hope. He still has his cyanide pill hidden on him, and he's really starting to think about using it. And then on March 7th, he ends up getting pulled from his cell and sent into a tribunal, basically a kangaroo court, where he is going to go on trial for his crimes. So Robert finds out he's going on trial. He's like getting ready to argue, getting his story straight that he was just some random dude passing by. He had no idea that there were weapons inside the barn. He goes inside this military tribunal, doesn't really even get to say anything. They're just like, yep, he's guilty, sentence him to death on the spot. They take him out, they load him in the back of a truck, and the truck takes off. So Robert is now in the back of a truck, moving down the road with a couple of other prisoners, a couple of other guards. He has no idea where they're going, but he knows what happens when they get there. They're gonna kill him. Now remember, the Germans never figured out that he was SOE. They have no idea that he's been trained to, I don't know, kill people with his bare hands or any number of other things. So they decided that he was just some other French guy that they tortured for 4 months and is probably broken, so they didn't bother to throw him in the truck with handcuffs, just like any other type of prisoner. So Robert hits one of the guards and jumps out of the back of this moving truck, tucks and rolls, and takes off running as fast as he can. The other guard stands up, starts shooting at Robert, but only for a second, because after the first couple of bullets, which missed, the driver ends up slamming on the brakes because he hears gunfire, not knowing what's going on, ends up knocking the guard down, and it gives Robert enough time to make it to the corner and turn it so he's not in their direct line of sight. From here, he just keeps running as fast as he can, taking every single corner, every back alley, trying to lose the Germans. After a couple miles, he hasn't heard the truck behind him in a while, and he's finally starting to think to himself, okay, cool, I managed to lose that truck. He turns one more corner and runs smack dab into a Nazi headquarters building.
Nazis. I hate these guys.
At this point, he's like, fuck, what do I do? Because if I turn around and run the other way, that's gonna look suspicious. There's guards in front of this place. Okay, I'm just gonna play it cool. Stops running, starts walking, acting and pretending like he's supposed to be there. The problem is, he's still wearing his clothes from 4 months ago when he was captured. He's got a beard, he looks like shit, he smells terrible, whatever, we just gotta roll with it. And he keeps walking towards this Nazi headquarters building and goes to walk right past it. And right at the main gate, there's this big fancy Nazi limo with little Nazi swastika flags on the side, and he kind of looks inside of it. There's keys inside the limo, looks across the street. The driver is clearly waiting for somebody, smoking a cigarette right across from the limo, and he's like, fuck it, jumps in the limo, turns the key, peels out.
What goes around comes around.
The driver across the street pulls out a pistol, starts shooting at the car, doesn't do any real damage. He turns a corner. He's doing the same thing now, but inside of a car, just speeding off, taking corner after corner, not knowing where to go, not knowing what to do. And then he sees a sign, Paris, that way. And he's like, okay, well, at least I know people in Paris. So that's where he goes. Makes it to the outskirts of town, runs face first into a Nazi checkpoint. Again, can't just, turn around and try a different route because that's going to look suspicious, especially if they've already radioed to look out for this car that he just stole. So he just kind of joins the queue. He gets in line with all the other cars waiting to get their papers checked and get waved through, and he just waits and he waits, and then he's up next. The Germans start walking up. There's no cars in front of him. He just floors it and drives through the barricade. The Germans start shooting up the car. They hit the car a ton, but luckily they don't hit him. From here, he drives the car as far and as fast as he can until there's black smoke just coming out of the hood of this car. And he's like, okay, gotta ditch this thing. Finds an abandoned quarry, drives it into the abandoned quarry off of a cliff. It explodes, and now he's just out in the middle of nowhere with absolutely nothing. And from here, he does the exact opposite of what you would expect him to do. He goes out into the woods, sleeps overnight, and then in the morning, walks back into the same town that he just escaped. And his logic was the Germans last saw him heading as fast as he could out of town. They're probably not going to be looking for him too hard inside of town, so that's exactly where he goes. And he decides he's going to go to the only place he knows where somebody kind of sort of might actually like him, and he goes to the return address that was on all those care packages that he got when he was in prison. It ends up being a Nazi-occupied hotel, and the guy that was sending all the packages is the guy that runs the hotel. So he goes there, that guy takes him in, gets him cleaned up, feeds him, lets him stay there for a couple of days while he gets him fake papers, and then he smuggles him out of town in the back of his truck in a giant pile of hay. And as they go through the Nazi checkpoint, the guy's like, oh, I'm just, I run the hotel in town. All the Nazis know who this guy is. He runs the Nazi hotel. He's like, I'm going to feed all this hay to my sheep. The Germans go in, they stab the hay pile with bayonets, somehow missing La Rochefoucauld every single time, and then they make it out of town. They go to the next town over, go to the train station, uses his fake papers to get on a train headed towards Paris. Once he gets on the train, he's sitting in the back and he can see Nazis coming through inspecting everybody's papers. And he's like, oh shit. And he's like, okay, well, I've got fake papers, but I don't know how good these fake papers actually are. They were good enough to get past the guy running the train station, but he's not a soldier clearly looking for somebody. And if these guys find out my papers are fake, it's game over. So he gets up, goes to the bathroom, crams himself into the little cabinet underneath the sink, and stays there for the entire train ride back to Paris. Once he gets back to Paris, he goes to his aunt and his uncle's house. They're happy to see him. They feed him, they clothe him, they get him everything he needs for a couple of days. He links back up with the French resistance. They get a message over to British SOE, and a couple of days after that, he gets extracted via either submarine or gunboat, depending on which source you want to read. Makes it back to Great Britain, gets interrogated all over again, making sure that he didn't get turned into a double agent, and from there, he gets to spend some time recovering from getting tortured and starved for 4 months straight. All right, spring 1944, he's recovered, things are starting to ramp up for D-Day, and he volunteers to jump back into France to help set the stage for D-Day. Same thing happens all over again. This time he jumps into Britannia right along the Atlantic coast, and he just goes in, meets up with all the resistance, starts training as many guys as he can, distributes all the supplies that he has, and goes out on missions, sabotaging rail lines, electrical plants, everything and anything that he can find to slow the Germans down for when D-Day comes. And again, the same exact thing happens. He's there for like 2-3 months, and then the Germans start realizing that the French resistance has suddenly gotten way more effective, so they start sending in a bunch of more people to break up the French resistance, and he's like, I'm not getting fucking captured again. I've made it this far without getting captured. I did a bunch of damage. He calls in, gets extracted, makes his way back to Great Britain.
That's all, folks.
All right, April 29th, 1944, the British launch a massive bombing campaign on a French munitions factory that is building ammo for the Nazis, and they bomb the holy hell out of it, but it's only down for about a week before they start producing ammunition again. At this point, the British are like, okay, a couple of options. We could bomb it again. I mean, bombs are effective, but they're not like pinpoint accurate. We're not going to be able to go in there, find out where the most important parts of this factory are, and target those specifically. We're just kind of like trying to blow the whole thing to hell. But the downside is it's really risky. You're putting all the planes, all the soldiers' lives at risk. It's a big deal. So we could also just have a saboteur go in there, pinpoint a couple of things, and take this factory out of commission. And that's what they decide to do. They call up La Rochefoucauld, he jumps back into France, and now he is tasked with taking out this munitions plant. Only problem, it's not the French resistance waiting for him at the drop zone. Somehow, it's the Germans. They ambush him and capture him almost immediately.
Not again.
They throw him in the truck, take him to some house, they start interrogating him. After a little while, he hears a bunch of trucks pull up outside, and he's like, oh great, the Nazis are here to take me to the real prison where I'm gonna get tortured all over again. And then the whole house just starts getting lit up with machine gun fire. He hits the deck, dudes come in with guns, kill all the Germans. It was the French resistance that was supposed to meet him there originally. They went out there, got the guns, came back for him, and then killed all the Nazis. At which point he's like, great, perfect, wonderful. Okay, now back to this munitions plant. He links up with the resistance, they start talking it, they case the place. This munitions plant is absolutely massive. Every single worker that goes in there has their papers checked going in and coming out every single day. This is not going to be easy. He has to figure out how to get fake papers for this plant. He has to figure out how he's going to smuggle in all the explosives, and he's going to have to figure out how he's going to get out once the explosives go off. So they go out, they end up finding a bunch of the maintenance crew for this factory and convince them to help him. They use those guys as actual IDs to make fake IDs for Robert and like 4 other resistance fighters. Then using Robert's knowledge of how to sabotage stuff and the maintenance guy's knowledge of how the factory actually works and what's important, they come together and figure out which targets they're going to hit, mainly water mains and electrical rooms. Then they got to figure out how they're going to get the explosives inside the factory. So they hollow out their shoes and they're going to smuggle explosives in their shoes. So they load their shoes up with explosives. Next day they show up to work. They all kind of stagger throughout this line. And like I said, this factory is huge. There's over 5,000 employees, right? And there's only like 1 checkpoint. So the dude that's checking papers is not like heavily scrutinizing. He's like, good, go, good, go, good, go. It's not real in-depth. Robert didn't realize that. He gets to walk right through. They get inside, they actually go to work. They work a full shift. At some point during the day, they go to the bathroom, hollow out their shoes, get all the explosives out of it, and then go stash it somewhere inside the place. And then tomorrow, they're gonna come back and do it all over again. After that, they finish working their shift, quitting time, the horn blows, they all go home, they go back to the hideout, they have a big party because the plan is working. But Robert is like, okay, these guys aren't checking us that heavily, and I wanna hurry this shit up and blow up this munition plant because every day we're making more ammo. You know, we need to stop that. That's the whole point of the mission. So he needs to figure out how to get more explosives in every single day because at this rate, it's going to take forever. So he figures the only thing you're really allowed to bring into this factory is your lunch. So we need to figure out how to get more plastic explosives inside of our lunch boxes. It's literally the opposite of the Johnny Cash song where he steals a Cadillac one piece at a time and it didn't cost him a dime, except now Robert is smuggling in plastic explosives to blow up the entire factory. So what he does is he goes down to the grocery store, buys a baguette, a loaf of bread, cuts the end off, gets a spoon, hollows out the entire loaf of bread, and just ass packs this baguette full of C4. Go back to work the next day, guy checks the papers, looks in the lunchbox, oh shit, he's got a baguette, this is France, that's normal, go ahead and go right in. And then there's 5 other guys also bringing a fucking loaf of C4. After 7 days, they managed to smuggle in 40 pounds of C4.
Oh, sourdough.
We love hot bread. We love a good hot bread.
After that, we're ready to blow up this plant. So here's the plan. Everybody's gonna go to work as normal. We're gonna bring even more C4. And then at the end of the day, factory closes at 7 o'clock. At 6:30, Robert's gonna slip away. He's gonna go out to the fuel warehouse and he's gonna rig up the fuel warehouse to explode with a massive chunk of C4, and it's gonna be on a 1-hour time delay. Then Robert's gonna hide till 7 o'clock when everybody else, including the other 4 resistance guys, are all gonna leave, and Robert's gonna run around the factory. He's got 30 minutes to place all the rest of his charges. He's gonna blow up the water main, the main power lines, and all the railroads coming in and out of the factory. The 4 resistance guys that already left are gonna grab their bikes and Robert's bike, and they're gonna pedal around the backside of the factory and wait by the 18-foot high wall on the outside with a rope. Then after Robert places his charges, he's gonna jump out of a window, run across the courtyard at the wall, yell over to him, they're gonna throw the rope over, he's gonna scale the wall, and they're gonna pedal off on bikes. Which is exactly what happens. They make it about 4 blocks away from the factory before there's a massive chain of explosions, and then they make it back to the safe house, have a humongous party, and get completely shit-faced. From here, Robert radios over to British SOE, says mission successful. They radio back a single word, congratulations. That munitions factory was then out of commission for 15 days straight, and it's unclear how effective they were after they did start manufacturing more stuff at the location. Buh! It was only out of commission for 2 weeks. I don't know why you're making such a big deal about it, like that's a huge deal. Buh! Okay, first of all, when you're playing Who's Got More Bullets with America and your factory goes down for 2 weeks straight, it's a fucking problem, okay? Second of all, a British Lancaster bombing formation only managed to put this factory out of commission for 7 days, and Robert La Rochefoucauld went in there with a loaf of bread and did twice as much damage, okay? That's gangster as fuck. Sorry, anyways, from here, Robert's just pretty much waiting to get extracted. He needs to get the orders of when and where to meet for his extraction, so he's hanging out at the safe house for a couple of days. The orders finally come down. Hey, tomorrow night, we need you to meet us in this next town over at this location. So he spends the next day memorizing the exact route he's gonna take, and he's gonna ride his bike there at night in pitch darkness. So he wants to memorize the route so he knows every little curve of the road so he can ride there in the dark. And that's exactly what he does. Starts riding his bike. It's pitch blackout. Can't really see shit. He hears a car coming up behind him, jumps in the ditch, waits for the car to pass by, comes back out, makes it a couple more miles. Another car coming, jumps in the ditch, hides, waits for the car to pass by, comes back out, riding his bike in the dark, can't see anything, and then all of a sudden, he just runs into something. And it's a German checkpoint. He literally rode right into it because, well, that wasn't on the map. And now the Germans have him at gunpoint and there's a curfew and he's not supposed to be out at this hour, so they start asking him questions. They're like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, And here is where being in the military from the age of 19 really shoots him in the foot. Okay, you gotta realize, Robert is like 21 years old right now, but he's had a really weird life between the ages of 16 and 21. Everything after the age of 16 has been like building up to do 007 type shit. So in a lot of ways, socially speaking, he's still a 16-year-old. So when he's asked, what are you doing out past curfew? The 16-year-old social skills kick in and he's like, I was out in the woods making love to my girlfriend. Okay, now for a 16-year-old boy making out with his girlfriend in the woods, great excuse, highly probable, definitely what's going on here. For a 21-year-old man that just got done working at a factory, not a great excuse. German guard says, and I quote, "Why don't you fuck your girlfriend at home?" To which Robert is like, From here, they take him to Fort Duois prison, throw him in a cell. He's informed that he's gonna start getting interrogated in 2 days when the head of secret police gets back in, and that guy's name is Friedrich Wilhelm Doza. Robert knows the name because Doza is like one of the best secret police the German has, and he has been responsible for arresting hundreds of French resistance guys. He's always infiltrating the French resistance and breaking them up and arresting everybody. So at this point, Robert's kind of freaking out, like, okay, I might have met my match with this guy. I can't let him know what my real name is. If I give him my real name, he's gonna track down my family, he's gonna hurt them next. And for the next 2 days, he considers taking his own cyanide pill just so he doesn't accidentally give up his name to protect his family. And really, over the course of this time period, he just comes to accept that, like, he's gonna die soon, but he can still determine how he dies. So he figures, you know what? I might as well try to escape. If I end up getting killed or if I end up getting recaptured, I'll take the cyanide pill, or they'll kill me when I'm trying to escape. I'm dead either way. I might as well give it a shot. And then he has an idea. He remembers back to the last time he was held in a prison, and that one guy had an epileptic seizure and the guards ran in and started helping him. Now, he's in a cell by himself, so he hangs around, he waits till the guard is walking by, and then he has an epileptic seizure. The guard unlocks the door, runs in to help, and then Robert grabs him, throws him on the ground, snaps his neck, and kills him. And here Robert's just kind of like, I just killed a guy.
You should find yourself a safe house or a relative close by. Lay low for a while because you're probably wanted for murder.
And then he kind of like snaps out of it like, okay, gotta move fast, looks for the keys to get off of like the block that he's on. He has keys to his cell, but he doesn't have keys to get out of the section of the prison that he's in, and neither does the guard. So he's like, shit. What do I do now? So he decides that guard's roughly the same size as me, so he strips the guard down and puts on the Nazi uniform. So now, not only is he dressed like a Nazi, but he also has a pistol. So things are looking better. He's like, okay, how do I get keys to get off this cell block? And there's, you know, just a bunch of cells, and then there's like the room that the guards are always going into. So he's like, maybe the keys are in there. So he walks in his Nazi uniform over to the guards' lounge, or whatever you want to call it, opens the door. There's 2 guards in there sleeping. So he kind of starts shuffling around, looking for keys to get off this cell block. The guards wake up, shoots both the guards, finds the keys, gets off the cell block, walks out the front door of the prison, and goes back to the safe house, does not get caught. From here, he doesn't leave the safe house for like 3 days straight. The Nazis know what he looks like. They have like a hand drawing of his face. They've got wanted posters all over town. They are looking for this guy. There's no way he's gonna be able to get out of this safe house and get to like the next safe house to the next safe house to get to where he can get extracted, because the Nazis are looking at every single checkpoint. They are gonna catch him. After about 3 or 4 days of hanging out at the safe house, waiting for everything to cool down, it's not cooling down. Nobody can come up with a plan on how to smuggle his ass out of here. And then the owner of the safe house is like, I mean, I do have one idea. My sister's a nun and she's a little bit husky. So, I mean, that is an option.
Daniel, hi.
Could you make me a woman?
Okay, hard cut. Robert, with a freshly shaven face, is now walking down the streets of France in a nun outfit, literally waving at Nazis as he walks by, and nobody suspects a thing. Robert makes it all the way to the next safe house, goes up, knocks on the door. A woman answers the door. He knows he's looking for a guy. I don't know his name. Mike, Rob, whatever. So, in a female voice, still trying to, you know, put up the impression that he's a nun, not knowing if this woman's to be trusted or not, he asks if, you know, oh, is Mike here? And she's like, yeah, I'll go get him. Mike comes to the door, and Mike is like, sees this nun in front of him, and he's like immediately like upset and distraught, and he's like, oh no, sister, are you gonna tell me that he passed away or he was captured? Thinking, because he's been waiting for Robert Le Rochefoucauld for like 4 days. He was supposed to be here 4 days ago. So he's thinking in his head, this nun is coming to inform him that his friend that he's been waiting for has passed away or whatever. At which point, Robert, using his man voice, is like, bro, I'm right here.
Can I help you, man?
Oh, sorry I'm late, but after all those scotches, I had to piss like a racehorse.
He goes inside the safe house, tells him the story. The woman that answered the door is actually this guy's wife, tells her the story. They all have a good laugh. From here on out, he's hanging out at this safe house. So he's hanging out at the safe house for a couple of days, and then a couple more days, and then a couple more days, and the orders for him to get extracted are just not coming through. There's no plans, there's no communication, just nothing. And eventually the owner of the safe house is like, okay, we got to get you somewhere that isn't here, because if the Germans come, you're going to get all of us killed. So he ends up organizing for him to go out into the boonies, into this lumberjack camp out in the woods, and he's just going to work there as a lumberjack until the orders come through. So that's what he does. He goes out to this lumberjack camp, and he's being a lumberjack, cutting down trees for weeks, and then weeks turn into a month, and then a month turns into another month, and he's finally like, what the fuck is going on? There's a war going on. I'm supposed to be, you know, doing stuff. I'm out here cutting trees. And he's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go back, rejoin the resistance, and go rogue. So that's what he does. One day he just walks out of the lumberjack camp, goes back into town, links back up with the French resistance group that helped him sabotage the ammunition factory, and just goes absolutely ham. Now, we don't have great documentation on what exactly he was doing, but it's pretty safe to assume he was going out, training more resistance guys, and then leading missions to sabotage stuff that he thought would piss off the Nazis. And like I said, while we don't know exactly what he specifically was up to, we do know that in his general area around this general time period, there was over 100 Nazi rail lines that got sabotaged. We do have one specific story that he took the time to write about, though, during this time period. He was working with the French resistance, and they were setting up an ambush for some German soldiers, and during this ambush, there was some type of building that they were in, either like an abandoned factory or a factory, whatever it was. He says he walks into a room, he opens the door, and as he opens the door into this room, it's just a room with a desk in the middle, and straight across from his door was another door, and at the same moment that he walked through his door, a Nazi soldier walked through the other door straight across from him. He immediately draws his pistol, starts firing at the German. The German draws his pistol, starts firing at him. They both mag dump each other, and both of them miss with every fucking shot. At this point, Robert and the Nazi are just looking at each other with empty pistols like,
I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
Be good just to hold him down by your side. Yeah, great.
like, what is the protocol here? Do I hurry up and try to reload faster than him and then shoot him, and hopefully I hit him this time, even though I didn't with the last 7 bullets? Or do we just have a fist fight to the death? What's the plan? So Robert and this Nazi are both just kind of looking at each other, probably for like a split second, but I bet it felt like forever. And they're both just like, and they both at the same time turn around and go out the door they came in and shut the door behind him, never go back. Robert never saw the guy again. So he goes rogue for a couple of months, has a bunch of missions, presumably does a bunch of stuff, trains a bunch of people, whatever, and then the entire landscape of the French resistance changes. Now, when you talk about the French resistance, a lot of people just assume that it's all the same thing. Like there's just one organization, one big entity that is the French resistance or the resistance, right? That's really not how it worked at all. There's a bunch of different factions of French resistance, and they were all doing different things, and some of them did not like each other and would work against each other. It was kind of a crapshoot. So you had factions of resistance that were loyal to what France used to be. They're essentially loyal to General de Gaulle. They're loyal to Free France. They want things to go back to how they were before the Germans showed up. You also have factions that are communist that want France to get taken over by communists and become a communist nation. And then you have other factions that are like comprised of almost exclusively Jewish people or whatever. So you have all these different factions with different motives, and they're not always working together. Well, by this point in time, D-Day has happened. Allied forces are here. They're liberating France. And because of this, General de Gaulle comes back, and he basically puts an end to all the resistance that is loyal to him. They're like, okay, we don't need the French resistance anymore. If you want to fight for France, you can quit being part of the resistance, and you can just come join the Free French Army, and you can be directly underneath me. And because obviously La Rochefoucauld is loyal to General de Gaulle, that's exactly what he does. So La Rochefoucauld joins the French army, and the French army is like, okay, we've got this guy that's basically fucking James Bond. He's been doing 007 shit for years. We should probably just give him some orders and cut him loose, or put him in charge of some people and get him into the action, right? Obvious thing to do. So naturally, that's what they don't do, because the military is going to military, and they decide that they're going to send him to officer school in the middle of World War II. So they pull him out of the field, send him to officer training. So Robert hates it, giant waste of his time. He's 21 years old. He's showing up to these officer training classes, getting taught by people that know less about what's going on than he does. They're less capable than he is, but he's, learning from them. So he's basically just shows up, jumps through all the hoops, graduates at the top of his class, and then he goes and joins the French army, and he gets assigned to a commando unit because, well, at least that makes sense. Now, by this point in the war, Germany is pretty much pulled out of France. The Allies are there, they're retaking France, but there's a couple of locations where they left a bunch of soldiers behind and they were going to try to hold them, mainly submarine bases on the Atlantic coast. The one that we're going to be talking about today is right outside of Bordeaux. These German submarine bases were basically impenetrable. They had bunkers, pillboxes, casemates, hundreds of thousands of mines around them, and then the concrete was so thick they were basically immune to Allied bombing. And Germany wanted to keep them running as long as possible because they wanted the U-boats out in the Atlantic harassing Allied shipping, which is going to hamper the entire war effort and make it harder for the Allies to push into Germany. So Robert and the commando unit that he's in have been tasked with taking out this massive sub base right outside of Bordeaux. And this is called Operation Venerable, and it happens on April 14th, 1945. Now, like I said, these submarine bases are basically impervious to Allied bombings, or at least conventional Allied bombings. So the Allied forces decided they were going to use a different type of bomb. Napalm, you know, jungle jelly, sweet, sticky fire. If we can't blow you up, we're just gonna slow roast you alive, was basically the plan. So they go in, all the commando troops get ready, they get staged, they napalm bomb the holy hell out of this place, and then they're getting ready to launch their attack. They send scouts forward, scouts come back, and the section that the commando unit that Robert is supposed to attack didn't really get hit by napalm. Okay, the problem, this section also has a massive casemate with a humongous gun, you know, like the big tank turret inside the concrete right there, and it's completely unscathed. And if that casemate stays intact and they launch this attack, that casemate is going to take out all the tanks, and then once the tanks are out of play, they're not going to be able to provide cover for all the ground troops, and the ground troops are going to get absolutely mopped by the machine gun bunkers, and it's just going to be one giant meat grinder. So the captain of this commando unit calls his officers in, Lieutenant Rochefoucauld included, trying to come up with a plan. To which Robert, hearing the problem, is like, oh, you have a very particular piece of equipment that you need eliminated that's very hard to get to, and you need it done quick, easy, and in a hurry?
What I do have are a very particular set of skills.
Now the captain is hesitant. He knows about La Rochefoucauld's background, but he's still like, how is one dude gonna go in there and take out this massive casemate by himself? I don't know if it's worth it. To which La Rochefoucauld is basically like, look, I mean, we're gonna get slaughtered tomorrow anyways. If I take me and like 3 other dudes with me and we end up dying on this mission and we fail, is us being at the battlefield tomorrow gonna make the difference on us getting slaughtered now or then? Like, you might as well let me throw the Hail Mary. And the captain is like, you know what? You're right. Fuck it. What do you need? To which Robert is like, okay, here's what I need. I need a rubber boat. I need some volunteers, and I need a loaf of bread. I mean, a bunch of plastic explosives. That night, they take the rubber boat, they paddle around the backside of this submarine base with nothing but a single flashlight to light their way. It takes them about 2 hours to get there. They crawl up the beach. They make it to this massive wall around this submarine base. At this point, it's starting to rain, which is actually a good thing because that's going to drown out any little bit of noise that they make. So they get up to this wall. Here's the plan. Robert's gonna scale the wall, does that. Now, there's the wall to the submarine base, then there's like a courtyard, and then there's the big bunker with the casemate in it. And in between the wall and this casemate bunker is cobra netting, that camouflage netting that's kind of like spanned between the two, so aerial reconnaissance can't see what's going on inside that courtyard. Now, Robert, sitting up on this wall, can see that there's a single German guard patrolling this courtyard, just going around in circles all night long. So he takes out his knife, cuts a man-sized hole in this cobra netting right where he's at, and he just waits till the guard is reasonably close to that spot, jumps through the hole, lands on top of the guard, slits his throat, then leans him up against the wall and tries to make it look like he's sleeping.
Don't disturb my friend. He's dead tired.
From here, his guys drop the plastic explosives down to him. He sneaks over to the casemate, places them where he thinks they need to be to cause the maximum amount of damage, rigs it up to explode in 7 minutes, runs back to the wall. They drop a rope down to him. He climbs up. They get back in the boat. They dip. While they're making their way back in their little rubber boat, massive explosion goes off. Hopefully he did enough damage to take the casemate out for the massive assault tomorrow. Tomorrow rolls around, they launch this massive assault. The casemate never fires a single round. Whatever happened, he apparently was able to disable it enough that they weren't able to use it. Unfortunately, during the assault, which he also partook in, somebody stepped on a landmine, that landmine exploded, and a piece of shrapnel shredded through his leg. He ends up getting hospitalized, has to go through surgery, get a prosthetic kneecap, and by the time he's recovered, the war is over. For his service, he was awarded the French Croix de Guerre as well as the Legion of Honor. Those are equivalent to like the Bronze Star with V device and the Medal of Honor. And then from the British, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Medal and the Distinguished Conduct Medal, which is equivalent to like the American Silver Star and the Distinguished Service Cross. The Distinguished Service Cross is second only to the Medal of Honor. So a bunch of high-ranking awards. And from here, he basically gets to live happily ever after, gets married, has 4 kids, becomes a mayor of his town for 30 years, and he even picks back up his family's noble title and becomes Count Robert de la Rochefoucauld.
They didn't come out and say he's a pimp, but I know a pimp when I see one. They called him the Count.
Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang out. I can't help but wonder who the Nazi was that he ran into and had the shootout with where they both missed with all their bullets and then decided to turn around and walk the other way. Like, it just feels like that's two main characters running into each other when they weren't supposed to.